Hey guys, this is the review assignment for tutorial 8, and there's 13 steps. We're going to skip the first two, so it's just putting in your name and date here. So the third step is going to the employee data worksheet. So it looks like this. Make sure that you click inside somewhere in any one of the cells inside the table to open this tab here. It says the Table Tools Design tab, and we're going to rename the table. Okay, it's good to rename the table just in case we need the reference for that table later. So we're going to call it EMP data. So I'm typing up here in the left corner, EMP data, and make sure it's one word. There's no spaces because we're not allowed to do that in Excel. If we did two spaces, it wouldn't allow you to enter that name. So one word, EMP data. And that's step 3. Step 4 says employees who are age 50 or older are allowed to contribute up to $22,000 to their maximum 401k plan in this cell. Or if they're not, then it's $17,000 that they can contribute to. So that's the maximum. So that's just a simple if function by the sounds of it. So we're going to type in if, and then open bracket. So make sure you type in if, and I like to do this, so pull up the if function, the dialog box. So I'm going to click on this fx or insert function, and I'm going to click, because we're doing the first cell in this row, I'm going to click on the first cell in their age group here. Okay, so now careful with the wording, it says if they're 50 or older, which means greater or equal to 50. Okay, so greater or equal to 50. So type in 50, and it's false because this person is 49, so that my condition works. And if that was true, so if they're 50 or over, they get the $22,000 maximum contribution. But if not, they only get the $17,000 one. Don't worry about putting in dollar signs just yet. The formatting will take care of that. So don't put it inside of this function. Dialog box here. So press OK, and there we go. So it's figured that. So just step number 4 is just a very simple if function, with the true statement being the $22,000, and then if that condition is not met that we put in, it's $17,000 is their maximum they can contribute. So step 5 is only full-time job status employees over the age of 30 with more than 1 year of service eligible for the 401k benefit. And okay, so there's a few things here. So this is an if and formula, and there's 3 conditions that have to be met. So that's why we use the if, both the if and the and. So if and. So we could just do a simple and function, but the problem was it would only say true or false if we didn't say the if and. We want to control what the true and the false statements say. So if you want to do that, you have to enter the if function first. So we want to do an and function, but we also want to have control of what the outcome is and how it's stated. So we put an if to control that and an and together. So I'm just going to click here in our formula bar and then click insert function, pull up the and dialog box. So we have a few conditions that have to be met for the true statement to appear. So their job status has to equal FT or full time. So I'm going to click on the job status box in the first row, and then that has to equal quotation FT, or they have to be full time. They also have to be over the age of 30, and it doesn't say equal to 30. Like the second person here is 30. But the right on 30, they have to be over 30. So the age in the first row here has to be greater than 30. Okay? To meet those conditions. And they also have to get this benefit, they have to have worked over 1 year. So years of service would be greater than 1. Okay, so if all those conditions are met, then you'll get the true statement. If you don't meet any of these, or even if you just don't meet one of them, you don't get the bonus. So don't press OK. The way I've done this is I'm going to click on, I've just filled out the condition part of the if function. So the condition is done. If it's true, then they get a bonus of 3% of their salary. Okay, so the 3% target is up here. And it's good to use the cell reference in case that ever changes. Maybe next year it'll be 5%. So use this as a cell reference. So X1, and I'm going to absolute cell reference that so that when I copy down, all of my values are multiplied by this. So so it's this 3% times their current salary. Okay, so that's if it's true. If they meet all those conditions, they get the bonus of 3% of their salary, and if not, it's just a 0. So I'm going to type in 0 and then OK, and the table filled out all our cells for us in the row. So that's nice. So if they met the condition, they get the bonus. So you'll see different numbers, and that's okay because it's 3% of their salary. So each person has a different salary. Okay. So that was step 5. Step 6 is a little tricky. It's an embedded if function that we're going to use. So it says all full-time employees are eligible for a bonus. Pay grade A employees receive 3,000. So if you look at this right here, pay grade A employees receive 3,000, grade B is 6,000, and C is 8,000. That's a lot of outcomes to this one. So we have to use an embedded if function. So the best way to do this is if, but the problem is here's the tricky part of this. We also have to include the people who aren't full-time. There's PT, part-time, and there's also something called a consultant or CN. So CN down here. So we still have to include them because when the formula goes down the rows, it's going to look for full-time, but if it doesn't find it, it might get confused. So what we have to do is include them in a way into this formula. And at the end of the step 6, it says, for employees not eligible for the bonus, display the text NE. So we have to include the people who aren't FT. So the best way to do that is in the dialog box here, I'm going to click on job status. Okay, so this is how you would write anything but FT. So anything that is not FT, this is how you'd write it. So kind of a lesser than symbol and then a greater than symbol, back to back, no space. And then, so anything but FT, that's what I'm saying here. If this does not say FT, then the true statement to that is NE. So quotation not eligible, okay, or the symbol NE for not eligible. Okay, so we've covered everything that's not full-time. Now we can cover things that are full-time. So the false statement, okay, so if it's not anything but FT and it actually is FT, then in the false statement we're going to put another if function. Okay, see the red bracket starting? So the initial bracket was in black, the second one is in red, and the third one will be in purple. So, our first statement after that would be, okay, we'll start with, you can do this in any order, but I'm going to start with pay grade A. So if their pay grade is A, if pay grade is equal to A, then, so I put comma, because that's our condition, and the true statement to that is the cell here. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to press F4 to absolute cell reference that formula. This is good to use a reference like the tutorial showed us, because if that ever changes, then we don't have to restart the formula. So the false, so if it's not A, then we have to do another if function because there's 2 more conditions remaining, B and C. So comma, if, so this is another false, this is the second false statement, and we're going to open it up with another if function. So see how this is purple now. So if their pay grade now, still click on the first pay grade, equals B, so quotation B, the letter B, that's our third condition. Then they get this, so X3. Okay, so I'm gonna press F4 so I can absolute cell reference. So that's the true statement to B. Now the only one left is the 8,000 here, so I don't have to go back and click on the pay grade again. The only thing remaining is X4. So I'm going to type in comma X4 and then press F4 to absolute cell reference that. Now I'm almost done. So I've considered all of the options there. And you see this little purple bracket? Well, that closes this section here. but this red section and the black section isn't covered yet. So I'm going to add 2 closing brackets, the red and the black, and then press OK. All right, and now you scroll down. That's all our bonus amounts there. Okay, so that was a little tricky, especially that first part. Anything but is like the 2 fish mouths pointing together, and that would be anything but full-time. So that's how we include the people who are not full-time. All right, so now we're going to do an if-or function. So if-or equals, because there's 2 conditions that can be met for the true statement, either or. Okay, that's where the or comes in. So I'm going to, again, click on the or, and then insert function box. So step 7 says, in the eligible salary increase column, enter if-or functions to insert the text not eligible if the employer's grade is C or the employer's job status is CN. Yeah, because these C people don't need a bigger bonus, right? They're making the maximum that they can possibly make, so they shouldn't be eligible for a bonus. And the people that are consultants, maybe because they don't work for us, they would not be eligible for a bonus. So if their pay grade equals C, so if their pay grade equals quotation C, or if their job status, okay, so job status right beside it, you can do this in either order as well, as long as these 2 conditions are there. Doesn't matter which order. If their job status equals CN for a consultant, they also are not eligible for the bonus. Okay, so instead of pressing OK, we're going to go back to this if. So we filled out our condition, so either or, pay grade C or job status CN. So if this is true, they are not, quotation not eligible. Okay, they don't get the bonus. But if they do, then we're just going to leave it blank, and we don't need anything telling us they're not eligible, because they are for a salary increase. Okay, so these people wouldn't get a raise. Everyone else are open to getting a raise. Okay, so there you go. And anyone with a blank would get a raise, or would be open to it anyway if they ask for one. So now we're going to use the HLOOKUP. Now if you look at the lookup tables on the second worksheet, these are VLOOKUP tables. The values are on the right side, and the code corresponding to those values are on the left. Here's different. This is a horizontal table, so the values go along the rows, not the columns. Okay, so if I wanted the information from the numbers here, that would be row 2. If I wanted this information, that would be row 1. Okay, so that's a horizontal table, so we have to use an HLOOKUP instead of a VLOOKUP. So HLOOKUP, okay, and then open bracket. So now, what does the question say here? It says, in the vision plan cost column, which we're in, enter the HLOOKUP function to do an exact match lookup to calculate the annual vision plan cost. Okay, so if you look at the vision plan, we already have this information, and we need that row 2 information. So when we click on this function, insert function, so the lookup value is here. That's the little code that we're going to use. Okay, go to the table array, and I'll show you something about this table. They've already named it, but if we don't know the name, I'm going to go to the worksheet table. I'm going to highlight the information I want, and it's called vision rates. So if you're following along, you could actually just type in vision rates, and it would refer to that table. And the nice thing about that is we don't have to absolute cell reference that range. All right, that range will stay there because it's got a name. We've named it. So that's the nice thing about naming tables. We won't have to absolute cell reference that table. Now, if it was a range without a name, you would have to absolute cell reference, but in our case, we don't. Okay, and it's row 2, that's the information we don't have. And at the beginning of the step, they said make sure it's an exact match. VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP will assume you want a range, but usually when you're dealing with money, you don't get a range of maybe $20 to $30. You want the exact amount. So if you want the exact amount, you just type in false here. Okay, if it was a range, we wouldn't type anything in there. But as it says here, to find an exact match, we type in false. Okay, so press OK, and it should work. And just one more thing with that step, that's the monthly vision plan cost. Now we have to multiply this by 12. So in the formula bar, I multiply that by 12, and now I've got the yearly vision plan cost. Okay, so that is step 8. That is step 8. And now we're on step 9. So this is the if error one. So we're going to use the if error function to display the message invalid hire. This is, now you would use it if error if there was an error, just to test yourself, just when you're dealing with large amounts of data like this. You might never see it, but just in case you do make a mistake, it's good to have that to identify that you've made a mistake. So we're going to do it in the year's service column. Okay, so this formula basically says when they were hired to the current date, and it compares it with the current date, okay, to get how many years they've worked here. So if we change the year, or if we make a mistake in the year, it'll show up here, okay, in the formula. So we're gonna just add in between, or sorry, after the equal sign, type in if error, okay, I'll spell it out, if error, and then we have to, just because there's a bracket there, we can't leave it, so we have to open the bracket, right, so we contain that formula. Then at the end of the formula, we want to put comma, and then in quotation, invalid hire date, just in case we make a mistake with the date and it's not a real date, quotation around that, and then close bracket. Okay, so we have our if error formula. It didn't change anything because there's no error, but we're going to test it to make sure that it actually works. So let's put in a date that can't exist. So there's only 12 months in a year. 18th month would be an error, and let's see if it actually calculates properly that this is an error. Okay, so I'm going to type in 18 instead of the 8th month, and as you see, this invalid hire date, I'll auto fit this column so you can see it. Invalid hire date pops up. Okay, and just leave that there so that if you're handing this in, that I know, or whoever you're handing this into knows that you tested that. And that is it for that step. Okay, step 9. So step 10, we're going to test for duplicates using conditional formatting, just like in tutorial 8. So highlight this whole column, column A, and go back to the Home tab. And then under conditional formatting, you would go to highlight cell rules, go down to duplicate values, so click on duplicate values, and you could leave it there, but we're going to custom format, okay, duplicate. So just the thing about duplicates, if you had duplicate names or duplicate last names, first name, last name, that's not technically a duplicate, that's just someone's last name, so you wouldn't want to change that. It's not right. You shouldn't do that. And also, like, let's say if they had the same GPA, you can't change the marks, right? But in something like this where the ID is very unique to the person, like a student ID or employee ID, there shouldn't be duplicates. So in some situations, there really shouldn't be any duplicates. So this is good to test. But things like names or maybe a score that they've both gotten the same score on, that's a possibility. So you wouldn't remove those types of duplicates, just to keep in mind. Okay, so we've gone to the format cells, so what we want to, and then fill tab, click on the light blue here, press OK. So we've done our custom format, our light blue, press OK. So to test this, we're going to go down to A101, so I'm going to type in here A101, let's go down to that last cell, and I'm going to type in the same number as the first one, just to test out whether our conditional formatting worked, and it did. Look, check that out. And inside the table, I'm going to click Control Home to get back, and it shows us there. So that's a duplicate number. Somebody has the same employee ID number, and that's an error. Okay, so just leave that there. We're not going to fix it, just to see that you've completed that step. So in the employee summary worksheet, so different worksheet, and the last worksheet, now we're going to do our COUNTIF function here. So I'm going to type in COUNTIF, so we're going to count the number. Count the number of female and male workers. So count if. So it's going to count only if the female area like if it meets a certain condition, which is F. So we put in the gender in column F for female and M for male. So if it meets this condition, I'll pull this up. So we'll get the range here, okay? And I know that the range in the gender field is E2. Okay, so it's E2. Oops, sorry, not to E2 to E101. Okay, and the criteria is F. So that's all you need for the Countif function. Pretty straightforward. So you just look at the range and what criteria are you looking for? Well, we're looking for employees who are identified as female. So we're going to press OK. And to save time, now you can re-enter that and do the same thing, but I'm going to save time. The only problem with this is you got to be careful because this is the wrong number. Because we know the range is E2 to E2 to E101, we're going to change that. So what happened was I copied it down, and then the range went down, so a row. Okay, so that's an error. Okay, so it's that. It gives us the same number because we haven't changed that criteria yet. So I'm going to open that up, just switch F with M, so it's going to look at a different one, and now you have the right number. So good range, and we're looking for M now, so a lot less males are working there. So now we want to compare their average salary, so we're going to use the average if, and there's one right here. And then I'm going to open the dialog box here. So the range and the criteria are the same, and then we're going to look up their salary range. Okay, so to get an average salary for females and males. So again, I'm going to go to the employee data worksheet, and then I know my range is E2 to E, just like it was before, E101. The criteria is the same as before, F. Now for the average range, it's actually in column I. So column I has their current salary, so that's what we want to compare. So I2 to I101. Alright, and press OK. And you have your numbers. Now so I'm just going to copy, make sure that you are aware. Yeah, it says there's an error because I took the lazy way out, but that makes an error. So make sure that it's I101, I3 to I2 to I101, E2 to E101. See what it did there? So it moved down a row again. And I also want to change the criteria to M. Okay, E2, E101, M is the criteria. This is the average range, okay, the range that was averaged, I2 to I101. Press enter, and we can just format that with accounting. Alright, so you can see, even though there's less males, they tend to make more on average, which is totally not fair, but that's how you do the average if to compare salaries. Alright, using two different criteria, and that is it for the review assignment. Just save what you have and submit through Dropbox or however your instructor tells you to. Alright, well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.